Hey guys, welcome to today's Geek Talk. Today we are going to discuss the Ben Kenobi versus Maul fight in Star Wars Rebels in the latest episode, Twin Suns. First off, I want to say that this might be my favorite lightsaber duel to date. Now, a lot of people already have been saying, oh man, it's so short, oh, what a letdown, it was supposed to be like this climactic fight. I'm gonna get more into that later on in the review, but just from the start, if that's all you're looking for, you're just looking for my general reaction, I think it could possibly be one of my favorite fights so far that I've seen on screen for Star Wars. First off, I want to give a shout out to Sam Witwer, who does a great job with Maul once again. Again, I've said it in the past, but I think Maul is a character who should not be in the story right now, but cannot deny that Sam Witwer always brings it to the table, and he always brings great sympathy and this deranged psyche to Maul, which is something, again, I will discuss later in the review. Same with Steven Statton, who is the actor who played Ben Kenobi in this episode. He perfectly embodies the old man Kenobi, the more wise and the more stoic Kenobi, not the one that we know from the prequel trilogy, but more the one that we know from the original trilogy. And he captures that perfectly. And I think the entire fight really showcases the growth or the degradation of both characters. In their initial conversations before they even clash blades, Kenobi says that he has risen above what Maul has festered into, and that really shows, because this entire episode we see Maul is just deranged. He needs to find Kenobi. That's his only purpose in life, is to find Kenobi and to get his revenge. And for Kenobi, he's accepted, all of his failings in life, all of his shortcomings, and he's risen above that on the light side of the Force. And I love seeing those two dynamics and how that was expressed within the fight, because within the fight, we see two very drastically different approaches to the fight. And the fight is almost a one-for-one representation of Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, especially the one scene with, I forget the samurai's name, but it's the main legendary samurai. He's facing against this hothead younger samurai who's like, oh, I can do better than you, I would have beat you. They were doing a sparring session, and then within, I think it was one stroke in the movie, the master beats the hothead. And that's exactly what kind of happens here. Obi-Wan tried his best the entire fight not to fight Maul. He tried to give him alternatives, he tried to talk it out. Again, just the freaking perfect Jedi that he is. And when we do get into the fight, he does play into more of the defensive counterattack type of fighting that we see. And okay, so the fight itself, the reason I love it so much, of course, is the beginning. I love that there were different changes in stances. There was this fight before the fight, and that's actually a sequence that I wrote in my fanfiction, Kylo Ren The Awakening, which I swear I still am working on. I've just been really busy, but here's a little snippet from that sequence. But it's totally what I wrote and tried to encapsulate in a fight, is that sometimes when you're starting out a fight, your opening stance is extremely important. It tells your fighter what you might do. It tells you might be using it as a feint. You might be doing it as a way to get geared up for the fight. But that happens here, and I think it works really well. It's also something that happened in Seven Samurai, where you see it several blade changes before they actually engage in combat. I like that there was a difference. At first felt like Kenobi was about to get in his standard Suresu stance, but then he gets in a very standard Shicho ready stance, and then same with Maul. He starts off kind of defensive, but then he adopts the aggressive, and you see this dynamic playing out that I think is lost. I feel in a lot of fights. You see people they mad dog each other and then they get into the fight, but to have this very nuanced sequence, it was very refreshing to me, and it makes it one of my favorite fights because it's a psychological fight. It's not so much a physical fight, especially with these guys are a lot older than they were when they first fought each other. Obi-Wan, when he was 22, fought Maul when he was mid-20s or whatever. So you have a very different kind of fight going on. But because of how deranged Maul was, he goes into the fight as the aggressor, and that kind of shows the failing of his mentality, is that he's so singular focus. He has this tunnel vision on just, I gotta kill Kenobi, I gotta get my revenge, gotta kill Kenobi, gotta get my revenge, that he doesn't really open himself to the possibilities. And we know that Maul is a better fighter than that. We've seen him in the past pick apart his opponents. But again, this was totally a psychological fight. It wasn't a physical fight at all. And I think that's probably why it's my favorite fight, because there's only literally 3 moves in the fight. There is Darth Maul's downstroke, which I thought was pretty cool. I like the way that Obi-Wan defended the strike, because he actually goes from low to high, because potentially Darth Maul could have been aiming for his leg, but then he changes up his attack vector to being up. It's a very nuanced thing, but he was able to adjust to that, to either a down stroke or a high stroke, and I like that. It was a very small move, but I liked it. And then the second one, I think it was another counter, and then some were likening Darth Maul's last move to his kill move against Qui-Gon Jinn, where he butted Qui-Gon against the chin and then stabbed him in the gut. But instead now Obi-Wan, realizing this, slices through Darth Maul's staff and also through Darth Maul himself. And some are even saying that Ben Kenobi sort of baited Maul into this way of thinking because of his opening stance. One of his stances are the same one that Qui-Gon used before his death. Now some people were like, oh, it was too short, that's so stupid, but there's so much nuance that happened within the scope of that, with so much forethought, that I think is lost in a lot of other fights that I really enjoyed in this fight. And I loved how at the end, Kenobi actually holds Maul in his arm, that he still, even though he just defeated his enemy just because he killed his enemy, he still has sympathy for his enemy, and he still has compassion for his enemy. And again, it's a really small detail, but it's a very, very nice touch. The entire representation of Ben Kenobi in this episode, I felt, was a perfect representation of what he should be and how he is. And I even think that this story and the way it was told, this fight in particular, was much better than what happened in Old Wounds, which actually gets a mention in the episode, and that's a reference, of course, to the original comic. It's actually not a very old Expanded Universe comic book, but it is something that was kind of in between Revenge of the Sith and when Clone Wars came back, because it does have the same sequence where freaking Maul comes back from being chopped in half and he has like these robotic legs, which is probably where Dave Filoni got his inspiration from, was from that comic. But in that comic, it was a very brutal fight. It was very there were punches being thrown and horns being grabbed at, and it was a very visceral thing. And then at the end, it was like, oh, Kenobi, kill me, kill me, kill me, and then he has all these visions about like Qui-Gon being killed by Maul and all this other stuff. But I enjoy that this is not what Kenobi would be thinking at this time. He is moved past that. He is definitely the poster boy for Jedi, and he wouldn't have like this turmoil for Maul. He would actually have sympathy for Maul. He would have that sequence of dialogue that we had in this fight in Rebels, saying, he's risen above that sort of mentality, and that, if I am going to kill you, I'm going to kill you with compassion. I'm not going to kill you with anger or anything like that. Of course, in the Old Wounds comic, they actually kind of subvert that by having Uncle Owen shooting Maul through the head. But I think this is actually a much better representation of what that fight could be and should be than the original comic was. So for those out there who think the canon can ever be better than, the original Expanded Universe, there you go right there. And it's actually, Old Wounds is something I actually never really enjoyed to begin with. I always had a feeling that that doesn't feel very genuine. Even though at this point I felt like a lot of what happened in this episode was contrived, I still really felt like it was done correctly. Even though how those pieces got there and how it ended up in that position, I still think it was really, really well done. But that's it. What did you guys think of the episode? What did you think about the fight? I definitely think it's one of my favorite fights. I can't, off the top of my head right now, I can't think of too many other fights that I prefer over this one, just from a psychological standpoint. In terms of maybe like a physical fight, of course I still like the episode 1 fight with Maul. But in terms of an overall cerebral fight, this is definitely up there for me. Definitely top 3 for me, for sure. But that's it, guys. As always, peace, love, and may the Force be with you. Always.